A warm and dry fall.
But we can really quickly slide into our winter pattern within the first couple of weeks of November.
How weather impacts wildlife this time of year.
Seeing probably more of them clustered together in certain areas where there is available water.
Plus, winter visitors flocking to Arizona in search of warmer temperatures. This is Arizona Week. Hello and thank you for joining us. Despite rain early this week in some parts of southern Arizona, the Weather Service registered no rainfall at the Tucson airport this October, where official measurements are taken. Unusual, yes, but the National Weather Service says it has happened before, at least 12 other times. What that means for the future could tell us plenty about our climate. Earlier this week, I spoke with climatologist Mike Crimmins from the U of A Department of Soil, Water, and Environmental Science. He says this is actually pretty typical weather.
I don't think of Tucson as having sweater weather in fall, so I think it's maybe a high bar we're trying to clear with sweater weather here. You know, October is a transition month in Tucson weather, and so we can either have late season tropical storms that are going to give us, a dousing of warm, wet rain, or we can move right into winter and get some of these cold storms, and we've had neither this year.
Ironically, this week we actually had rainfall in the desert.
Somebody did.
Yeah.
Not at my house.
So where does that play in? I mean, is it late or is it early then?
That storm that we actually saw last night that gave precip to northwest side of Tucson was actually kind of an early winter type storm, not very cold, but had drawn up a little bit of moisture from the south and was kind of a hint at the kinds of storms we'd see a little bit later in the winter.
A little bit of a lackluster October. What does that then mean for November and December? Are we moving into a wet winter?
It's so hard to know. Each month is kind of its own beast. And so again, October can be very warm, very dry, very sometimes wet, sometimes cool. We've actually been, for the last couple of years, really having these warm Octobers, very warm overnights, warm high temps. Dry conditions, not totally unusual, but we can really quickly slide into our winter pattern within the first couple of weeks of November. And so now we're just kind of waiting around, looking at the weather charts, looking at the weather forecasts to see if that winter pattern is going to set up. And then we're looking a little bit even further down the road to try to understand if La Nina, which can give us dry winters, if that's going to impact our winter here in Tucson.
Okay, and I want to be clear again. El Nino, La Nina, what's the difference?
Okay, so El Nino is the shift in sea surface temperature patterns, and La Nina is the kind of the other side of that coin of that shift in sea surface temperature patterns. Okay. El Ninos, warm water in the eastern Pacific, typically move the winter storm track closer to Arizona and can give us a higher frequency of those winter storms. Except for the Super El Nino, that didn't seem to pan out that way. We ended up having a very dry winter, still trying to understand that one. La Ninas historically shift the winter storm track towards the Pacific Northwest, leave us out of a lot of the action. We have a reduced number of winter storms and typically have warmer and drier conditions here.
Okay, what does that mean then for our drought? Because we continue to be in a drought.
Yes, so we've just been bumping along for years here. Last winter was a weak La Nina, barely La Nina conditions, but we squeaked out a really quite reasonable December and January, but then moved very quickly into very warm, very dry February and March. Picked up some precip in April. Really weird year. This monsoon season, we had record wet conditions here in July, and then it shut down completely in August and September, running into near record dry conditions August, September. So we've been whipsawing back and forth between some drought relief, back into drought, drought relief, back into drought. We're really back into that situation again with drought. This next couple of months with the La Nina does not really spell relief.
Because we had such an active summer, so to speak, is that why we're getting this now in the fall?
No, there's really no correlation between what happens in the summer and what happens in the winter. So they're really different mechanisms. The monsoon is controlled by some larger scale circulation patterns that originate to the south. And then once we move into the winter season, we're now then looking towards the Pacific, largely El Nino or La Nina. So they're not really related. So you can get lucky and get wet summers followed by wet winters. They're rather rare. We tend to deal out more of these sort of dryish, near normal summers and then dry winters in our historical records. So, just looking climatologically, these La Nina dry events really do tend to spell more drought on the horizon.
That means summertime, which could cause problems for wildfires.
Right, so we grew a lot of grass in a very short period of time in July. and set up, I think, some really ripe wildfire conditions even for now. I mean, that wouldn't be out of the question to have some lower elevation grass fires emerge even in October or even in early November. But then next spring, once we dry out again, I'd expect to see that same concern as we did last spring with a lot of those low elevation fires.
Okay, so even here in late October, early November, it doesn't really spell anything for our winter.
No, it really doesn't. This is a weird transition month. If you look back in the records, precip-wise, we have extremely wet conditions. We had Hurricane Octave back in 1983, flooded out all of Tucson. We have many years where there's either just a trace for the month, or we'll now have 5 in the last 65 years where we've had no precip at all. So, but then you can move pretty quickly into an active winter pattern in November, or not so active. Okay. So, Tucson's got all of that. We're a dry place, and winters aren't normally extremely wet, but we would expect to see that frequency of winter precip really start to pick up later November, December, and January. January kind of the pivotal month as far as the height of our activity, and then we sort of tail back into spring later in the season.
Dare I say snow, as we are here in the fall?
Yeah, well, snow, I'm sure it'll snow at some point up on the Catalinas. Snow events have become increasingly rare down in the valleys. They're still not out of the question, but again, they're rare in the record as we get warmer and warmer.
Is it a fair question to ask, what does this tell you about being able to look into the future, 5-10 years from now? Does any of this give you any indication of what's to come?
I think that there's such a strong trend related to climate change in our local temperature record that I think October's in particular, this is probably closer to what we should expect in the future than some of the cooler Octobers of the past. So I think that thinking about warm Octobers, whether or not they're wet or not, warmer, I think, is really what we're looking forward into the future with.
And there are people who come to Arizona for the weather. They're winter visitors, also known as snowbirds, and some communities cater to those seeking sunshine. We begin our coverage with a trip to Villa Capri, Tucson, a mobile home park on the northwest side of Tucson.
Villa Capri is a 55-plus community. We have a number of residents that are from various places in the U.S. and Canada.
What sorts of lifestyle do they have when they come here?
Most of them are very active. They go golfing. They enjoy our pool. The activities going on at the clubhouse, like potlucks and bingo and bridge, things like that.
Now, this park has been here since the 1970s.
The early 70s, yes. It was developed by John and Mamie Kai of Marana. It was a family park when it was first developed.
And then it became very clear that, we have great weather, a nice, small, tight-knit community, and we can gravitate the business model a different direction.
Well, they really wanted to create a spot for people to come and feel welcome and enjoy easy living. And that's exactly what we provide here at Villa Capri, affordable, easy living. Just about everything is included with the monthly space rent, trash, recycling pickup, water, sewer, 64 TV channels are included. About the only thing that isn't included is gas, electric, and telephone and internet.
So the fee that people are paying to live here in a gated community, as you said, it's pretty safe. What is it approximately?
It can vary anywhere from $413 a month to $458 a month, depending on the size of the space, whether it's a double wide or a single wide, if you have a corner lot. We have a great pool that's heated year-round, a spa. We have the clubhouse, which always has something going on in it. We are a gated community. We work very hard at keeping a very well-maintained environment for our tenants. They have limited responsibilities with upkeep. We take care of the gas lines, electric lines, water, sewer, those type of things. If they owned a site-built home, they'd have a lot of responsibilities for the home.
So when visitors, they leave and then they come back and they find their home, their place fully intact?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And they have a lot of great neighbors that will watch their homes for them and, pick a few weeds here and there.
Now for those visitors we've heard so much about, Sylvia Rosen and Carl Sklars are Canadians. Sylvia's parents used to live here during the winter. When they passed away, Sylvia took ownership and began spending her winters in Arizona. And her husband, Carl, didn't mind.
So it's about 4 or 5 months in the winter that we're here, and we take full advantage of it. So it's like a 5-month holiday, I suppose, is how I see it. We are very active while we're here in Tucson. We see this as an amazing playground for us. We take part in many things. We love the theater, we love live theater, we love live music. We love going to the museums, we love hiking, we go up into the mountain ranges all the time for drives, just for a day, and in and around the area. So we look at this city and this whole part of Arizona. It's just an amazing winter playground for us.
And it's also a good place to travel further on. So for instance, if you want to go to Mexico or the Caribbean or to Hawaii while we're here, we can do that from here. And we've gone to all of those places. Well, you know, not every year, but quite often we go.
If it gets a bit cool in January, we head elsewhere.
How much of the way you live, your lifestyle, is because of the weather and why you come to Arizona? What would it be like right now for you back at home?
It's actually not bad. Actually, there's a huge Arctic front coming in this weekend, so yes, this is why we are here. We're active. We like being physically active and being outdoors, and I am not a big fan of cold weather, so that it allows us to be far more active.
Sylvia likes to have sunshine, which you get a lot here, and where we live, there's lots of sunshine during the summer because it's in the Okanagan Valley and it's semi-arid, not arid, but semi-arid. They can grow grapes there, you know, vines and grapes, and they have a wine industry. But then, because it's so far north and it gets very cloudy, that moderates the climate, but it's gray, gloomy.
We live on a 50-mile-long lake. We live right on the lake, so the lake causes the inversion layer, so you are in fog.
Cloud and fog, and it gets cold and it snows and all those things.
Things we don't have here in Arizona.
Yeah, you don't. That's true.
Although we have gone up to Mount Lemonins and
You've seen snow in the desert.
just go, let's get away from it all and experience a bit of snow.
How complicated is it to manage 2 households? Because that can't always be easy.
We're getting better and better at it. Our suitcases, etc., are becoming smaller all the time. It gives me a reason to go shopping down here. So our households are fully separate. So that isn't an issue. It's just clothes, in my case, shoes that I bring back and forth. There's only so many, but no, it's easy. It's easy, and it's wonderful here because it's a small gated community. All the neighbors look out for one another, so we can just lock up and go away for whatever number of months. Or in the summertime, we have a wonderful neighbor who looks after our place, and anytime there's any issue, we get contacted right away. So we don't mind at all. It's a great situation where we can just come and go.
And occasionally we have come during the summer
Okay, what'd you think?
to see the monsoon.
He wanted to see a monsoon. He'd never seen one before. He was all excited.
When the rain went horizontally, that was interesting.
So we have come a few times in the summer just to come.
Not for short periods of
Just
time.
very short periods of time.
When you think about your experience and how you've lived your life, did you ever think that you'd be living, well, maybe you did, Sylvia, in a different place because of the weather and how it makes your life, it sounds, very happy?
You know, somebody said to me the other day, what a summer we've had here. And it's so hot. And I said, well, no, we just got back a few days ago here. And I said, well, we're quite happy with it because we've had summer, so we're looking forward to having some warm weather. And so they asked where I lived, and I said I live on this beautiful lake in foothill, in the mountains and vineyards, etc., where I live, and that I live here. And they said, well, wow, you've got the best of both worlds, or best of all worlds. And I said, yes, we do have the best of all worlds. And I feel very fortunate to be able to do this.
And you have wine.
Yes, we do. Yeah, it's more than the weather, though.
No, it's way more than the weather. We could be hanging out in Palm Desert. We could be hanging out in Scottsdale. I mean, that would not be the issue. It's way more than the weather. This is an amazing city. We absolutely love Tucson. It is one of the most interesting, diverse, exciting cities I have ever lived in, and I've lived in lots. It just feels good there. There's a lot of quality to this city, and I love it.
The Arizona Office of Tourism does not track winter visitors. Rather, it focuses on seasonal overnight visitors. Though more than 10 years ago, Arizona State University collected data, and it showed about 300,000 winter visitors, pumping about $1 billion into the state economy. And that's significant and proof that our climate can translate into business. For more on that, I'm joined by George Hammond from the U of A Eller College of Management. George, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Big business and the folks who come here for our sunshine.
Absolutely. Both the winter visitors and the tourists who come to the state to enjoy the outdoor amenities and all the things that we have to offer that you can do in Arizona in the winter that you just can't do as you go further north.
Do we also see industry coming here because it's reliable weather, the majority of the time here in Arizona?
Absolutely. I think it does have an impact on firm location decisions. It's easier to attract employees to places where they want to live already. So that can be a powerful recruiting tool, just locating a business in a place that people want to live.
You can also recruit people with sunshine, I understand.
You absolutely can. That's one of the things that I've been tracking is looking at Arizona's overall quality of life measured by the states that people move to and move from. And using kind of a competition-based methodology, Arizona has quality of life ranking has been in the top 10 since going back to the 1970s. So Arizona, for the overall population, the overall migrant population, is a very attractive state. But one thing that we do notice is that when you focus in on the working age population, Arizona doesn't tend to rank quite as highly.
Okay, so winter visitors, retirees are coming here.
Absolutely, are a big deal.
What are some of the things they're coming here for? I mean, the weather obviously is one of them.
Climate is hugely important in migration decisions. Economic performance, so wage levels matters. Other amenities, crime rates can affect migration decisions, as well as kind of a myriad of other factors. But it generally boils down to economic performance. Can they find a job, particularly for people who are looking for a job? What are the wage levels that are available? The crime rates matter, pollution matters, and then recreational amenities. So can you play golf? Temperatures matter as well, and particularly low precipitation is generally something that factors in positively as well.
We met some folks who said that the health also, because of the climate, and it makes it easier for people with asthma or certain allergies. Have you seen that? Absolutely.
That's been something that's mattered in the long term as people have moved around the U.S. looking for places where it's easier to breathe. Arizona's been attractive for that reason.
Arizona's always had nice weather, decent climate. Why isn't Arizona a bigger place on the map when it comes to a business state?
Well, it's something that, climate matters, and it does positively influence our overall economic growth, but lots of other things matter as well. And these days, in particular, education matters, and educational attainment rates, especially for the bachelor's degree or better population. And that's an area that Arizona has gradually fallen behind the national average, and now we're significantly below the U.S. average. And as we think about the future, Arizona is going to want to really invest in education, particularly of our workforce, because that's what's going to drive wage levels and business location decisions over and above the climate.
Okay. As I understand it, it's a challenge to track these numbers, this data. Does that mean we'll likely see something like that in the future where people will look at it and say, we should look at these numbers?
I think it will. It's something that's difficult to track. It takes a big investment. You need to hire people to actually go out and look at the activity at RV parks and areas where winter visitors might tend to locate. But as the winter visitor behavior changes, if they're not using RVs, they're not bringing RVs into the state as much, that's something that can skew that data. So it's something that takes a lot of work and a lot of analysis and resources to do.
Okay, thank you so much, George.
Welcome, thank you.
Weather plays a role in the economy, and it also has an impact on wildlife this time of year. Here's Klima. She's the Terrestrial Wildlife Program Manager for Arizona Game and Fish.
Well, what we're seeing is that the deer aren't moving during the hotter times of the day. And so early in the morning, early in the evening is when we're seeing them moving. And then we're also seeing probably more of them clustered together in certain areas where there is available water.
Okay. There's been some bear activity in areas that we don't normally see or normally hear about. Is that because there's no water up in the high areas?
That could be one reason. It has been awful warm. These bears are up and moving around, and they're looking for food, they're looking for water right now.
When you see bear activity in lower elevations where there will be people, the Game and Fish Department has had to make some adjustments.
Yes, obviously human safety is our primary concern. And so when we have bears that are coming down low, we have to address that. Sometimes we can relocate those animals back to a more wild habitat where they're not going to be influenced by people or people won't be influenced by them. And sometimes, due to our policy, we do euthanize some animals.
Whereabouts have we seen the bears in activity that is not normal for what we see this time of year?
Well, recently we had a bear in Elgin and a bear in Sonoyta, so both in that 83-82 highway area. And they've been, one broke into the Abbey and was trying to get at something that was in that building. And then we had that other one as well in an area where there were people and it was causing damage to habitat.
Bears are getting ready for hibernation right now, or is it too soon?
They will be in the next few weeks. As soon as we get a cold snap and the weather cools down a little bit, those bears will be going into what's called torpor. Not quite hibernation, but something very similar where they're going to be bedded down for the remainder of the winter.
Right now, here we are in the fall moving into the winter. We also have hunting seasons. Are you seeing the same amount of activity out and about in the surrounding areas?
Well, I was out patrolling this weekend and I did see less people out this hunt than normal. Maybe that's due to the high temperature, maybe it was due to the homecoming game that was this past weekend. But there seemed to be plenty of deer out there and people were harvesting animals, so that was all positive.
Does this tend to play an effect that we'll see later on, maybe next season, where we will see less wildlife just because it is hotter and drier right now?
It's possible. I would say it's probably unlikely though. Our winter precipitation will be what's important because that's when our does will be pregnant, and so as long as they have good nutrients, good water, good supplements, then they will give birth to healthy young, and next year those will be available for harvest.
Game and Fish putting out a caution to people in urban areas and rural areas as well.
Just, always want to let people know to be aware of what's in your yard. During these hot and dry periods, this is when we might have animals moving into yards and looking for food, looking for water, so just be cautious of what's out in your yard. Try not to have water available, try not to have food, bird seed on the ground. We want to make sure those animals stay in the wild where they can be safe.
It's an important reminder just to be aware, as you said, but we're also continuing to see snakes out a little bit later than usual.
That is definitely something to keep in mind as well, is that rattlesnakes and other reptiles love the heat. So be aware, be cautious, look where you're stepping, and make sure that there's nothing in the area before you go.
With other wildlife, how are populations looking?
So we had our pronghorn surveys about 2-3 months ago, July and August, and those numbers look great. We have high numbers of pronghorn down in the Sonoyta area and over in Unit 32, which is our Bonita area. The fawn crop was a little low this year, but overall we were very pleased with how that population looks.
Sounds like weather, the drier temperatures, weather that we're seeing, not really playing a huge role on wildlife.
It might, but it's going to be something that plays out over a time period. We're not going to see something right now, but maybe 6 months down the road, a year down the road, we may see some influence. But given that Arizona's been in a drought for the past, 15 years-ish, the dry is nothing new to our wildlife.
Okay, and that warmer temperature means people will be going out into upper elevations as well.
It could be, yeah. People are getting out and enjoying this nice weather and out and hiking, so it's very possible that they will be in high elevations.
Okay, and just to be clear, if there's an encounter with wildlife, what is the best thing a person can do?
If you encounter wildlife, the best advice I can give you is be big. So don't run, don't look scared, look at the animal, throw rocks at the animal, haze the animal. You want to be big and scarier than the animal. And I know that can be hard to portray, but that's the best advice I can give you.
Back to Villa Capri now, and for the story of Ruth Stelatto, a winter visitor from Pennsylvania. She's been coming to Arizona for nearly 30 years. And Ruth, where are you from?
I'm from Meadville, Pennsylvania.
How'd you find your way from Meadville, Pennsylvania to Tucson, Arizona?
My mom and dad came here in the 60s because he had rheumatoid arthritis, and my brother went to the U of A. And so ever since, they're long gone, but we've been coming some, and then when we retired, we just came here to check it out.
Fair to say you're a winter visitor, also known as a snowbird.
That's right.
What do you like about this community?
The best thing of all is the weather. The weather allows you to be out and doing all those active things. For years we played golf 2 and 3 times a week, and that's probably one of the reasons that we loved being here.
So what is life like here in Tucson for a winter visitor? I mean, how is it so different from where you're from originally, Pennsylvania?
Well, I think when you get up in the morning, you know the sun is going to shine and that you can go outside and do things. You don't have to clean the snow and ice off your driveway and sidewalk. And when you come specifically to here, you have a lot of friends and you are out playing cards and mahjong and meeting them for lunch and, you know, all the social things.
What's it like managing 2 households in 2 states?
That's hard work. We actually are downsized. We have a condo in Pennsylvania anymore, and it's, you know, it's about the size of our mobile home here, so not as much work.
When did you come to Tucson this last time? What month?
October.
All right, and when will you depart?
April. We're actually here 6 months.
And does family come here? Do you go back home for holidays?
We don't usually. Sometimes they come. And I have 2 sisters who come here every winter also, so I don't see them in the summer, but I do in the winter.
Economically, it seems like this is a great solution for families looking for an alternative. Have you found that?
Yes, yeah. Where we come from, a lot of people go to Florida and Hilton Head, and most of them have 2 houses. And that's people probably in our financial spectrum would not do that because they either go one place or the other.
So the weather, as you said with your parent who had arthritis, I mean, the climate plays a role in your health and your happiness.
Yes, yes. Those people who are so affected by the sun, their moods are much better when they're in the sunny area. And in northwestern Pennsylvania, it's gray and cloudy an awful lot of the time.
And Tucson makes you happy.
That's right, it does.
And that's our program. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, thanks for joining us.